Welcome to SoulShift, the podcast that challenges us to rethink what's possible through the lens of community wisdom and social justice. I'm your host, JyOba X, and together we'll dive deep into the intersection of community wisdom, radical possibilities, and social justice. Today's episode is all about Juneteenth. So, whether you're an activist, educator, or just someone looking to make a difference, you're definitely in the right place. So, let's do some soul shifting together to create a just and equitable society. I'm going to assume that many of y'all are familiar with the term, we ain't free unless we are free. If you grew up in a Black community, this is a commonly utilized phrase that permeates through many of our conversations. Barbershop, hair salons, churches, community gatherings, reunions, and so on. It resonates even more so in spaces steeped in Black liberation, pride, solidarity, and collective works. It's often associated with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who frequently emphasized the interconnectedness of human rights and justice in his speeches and writings. So, for instance, in his 1963, a letter from the Birmingham jail, he wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. So whatever affects one directly affects us all indirect. So we ain't free unless we are free is a core tenet of many social justice movements, reflecting the belief that systemic change and true liberation require inclusivity and unity. In today's episode, we honor Juneteenth and its radical possibilities, promise, and its critical role as a historical cultural event. We'll recognize how it serves as an important repository of knowledge and community wisdom, and how it cultivated collective action to uplift Blackness in America. So we'll do this by putting a spotlight on the Juneteenth origin story, while also sharing a brief biography of wisdom practitioner, activist, and educator Ms. Opal Lee, also lovingly referred to as the Grandmother of Juneteenth. We'll highlight a few of Miss Lee's key triumphs as a wisdom practitioner, while also connecting her lived experience to SoulShift's theory of community wisdom, which we frame as the synthesis of many lived experiences that continuously evolve as communal knowledge through resilience and agency within a marginalized group or people persevering the oppression of power and privilege. That's community wisdom. So, with that said, let's get to it.
What is the origin of Juneteenth?
Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, and Emancipation Day, commemorates the end of slavery in the United States of America. I like to frame it as the Independence Day of Blackness in America. Now, many of y'all think all enslaved blacks in the United States were free once President Abraham Lincoln issued the Proclamation of Emancipation on January 1st, 1863, declaring that all enslaved people in Confederate states were to be set free. But of course, we know that colonizers weren't prone to relinquishing their privilege and wealth back then, and certainly aren't interested in doing so now. So if you listen closely, we can still hear the lingering echoes of grumblings today. What the hell gives this man the right to turn off the spigots of our dominion, privilege, and profits? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Oh, the early rumblings of neoliberal murmurs. I digress.
General Order #3.
Enforcement of the proclamation did not come to many until much later. But eventually, the dismantling of arguably the most brutal slavery system in mankind's history commenced until June 1955, when Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas to issue General Order Number 3, officially announcing the end of the last vestiges of slavery in Texas and the United States of America. This order came over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and marked the liberation of the last group of enslaved Africans in the Confederacy. Hence the date, June 19th. It became known as Juneteenth, the true Independence Day for Blackness in America. After the first Juneteenth celebration in Texas began in 1866, a year after General Order Number 3, more Juneteenth celebrations would follow, spreading across the country. Those early Juneteenth festivals consisted of prayer meetings with the singing of Black spirituals and beautiful Black people wearing new clothes to express joy and pride towards their newfound freedom of Blackness in America. I liken these events to extended Easter Sunday worship services with all the expected adornments to present one's Sunday best for the peering eyes of others, but not necessarily God, right? But even still, it's funny, somewhat ironic, maybe even fitting given Christianity's focus upon the resurrection of a white male savior whose acolytes used his and his father's teachings to justify our enslavement to begin with. But the contradictory performance of spiritual patriarchal power. Gotta worship it, right? Gotta. Well, for decades, Juneteenth was celebrated primarily in Texas until the Great Migration of Black Southerners to the West and the North regions of the United States, which led to its spread in the early and mid 19th century to other states in the Union, becoming a day to celebrate African American culture and heritage through parades, cookouts, and educational activities. So it fell off for a couple of decades. It saw a resurgence with the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King Jr.'s eventual assassination in 1968. Since then, it's grown in importance through the efforts of community leaders. In 1980, Juneteenth was recognized as a state holiday in Texas, while shortly thereafter, other states in the Union followed suit. And finally, on June 17th, 2021, President Joe Biden signed legislation making Juneteenth the 12th federally recognized holiday in the United States of America.
The Grandmother of Juneteenth.
In celebrating Juneteenth today, SoulShift honors the life and journey of wisdom practitioner Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth. Miss Opal Lee is a retired teacher, counselor, and activist who was instrumental in making Juneteenth a federally recognized holiday. In 2016, at the age of 89, Miss Lee embarked on a symbolic walk from her home in Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. To promote Juneteenth, she walked 2.5 miles each day to symbolize the 2.5 years it took for the Emancipation Proclamation to reach enslaved people in Texas. Ultimately, at the age of 94, her good deeds and vision galvanized people that cultivated collective action. She accomplished her goal to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Miss Opal Lee's dedication and perseverance to preserve and promote Black history was triumphant due to her tireless advocacy. She continues to be an influential figure in the fight for civil rights. As a result, Lee has received national and international recognition for her Juneteenth advocacy. She was present at the White House ceremony marking the historic moment, and in 2022, she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. She has spoken at numerous schools, community centers, and public events, sharing her knowledge and experiences to inspire future generations. She's even published her own Juneteenth children's book. And on top of all that, she's been involved in various community initiatives in Fort Worth, Texas, including efforts to improve education, combat hunger, and promote economic development in underserved communities. Her leadership and activism have made a lasting impact on her community and beyond. Miss Opal Lee is the epitome of community wisdom and a model wisdom practitioner in which all of us should emulate. Her advocacy and love for community engaged in the preservation of historical memory. Lee utilized the collective memory and oral history of African American communities to advocate for Juneteenth. Her efforts were rooted in the stories and experiences passed down through the generations, emphasizing the importance of remembering and honoring the past. Lee inspired and mobilized community action. Her activism is a testament to how community wisdom can mobilize people toward a common goal. By tapping into shared values and historical consciousness, she was able to galvanize support and bring attention to the significance of Juneteenth. Her community walks and educational initiatives drew on a collective desire for recognition and justice. So, knowledge sharing was foundational to her activism. Lee's work involved educating others about Juneteenth and its importance. This aligns with community wisdom's role to teach and pass down knowledge. Lee's efforts ensured that younger generations understood the historical context and ongoing relevance of Juneteenth, thus preserving this critical piece of cultural heritage. As we always do, we lean into call to actions towards the end of each SoulShift episode. I want to encourage y'all to learn more about Juneteenth and get involved in your local communities. Identify and celebrate an Opal Lee story in your community. I'm sure there are several, if not hundreds, of those stories in the communities that you currently live in. It could be on a number of different things related to the cause that you're trying to advance in your community. Check out the links below to learn more about Juneteenth. So this week we learned about the origin of Juneteenth and Ms. Opal Lee, a notable current day hero and wisdom practitioner. We learned about her lifelong dedication and advocacy for Black pride and heritage in America. So, did this episode resonate with you? Do you have ideas and thoughts on the best ways to celebrate Juneteenth and its cultural relevance to Black culture? If so, please share. This is a space of communal sharing, solidarity, and radical love. How do we cultivate the values and practices of events like Juneteenth, Black History Month, and Kwanzaa into an everyday pursuit of unapologetic Blackness? Thank you for tuning into this episode of SoulShift, where we transform radical possibilities into reality. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, be sure to follow us on your favorite social media platforms via @SoulShift, @SoulShift Podcast, and @SoulShift TRP, which stands for Transforming Radical Possibilities. Like and share our episodes and support the show by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to explore and amplify the wisdom of our communities. So until next time, remember, together we can shift the soul of our society. Stay inspired, stay connected, and keep transforming those radical possibilities.